Hello, everybody. Good morning. Happy Thursday, April 16th. Welcome to the Awake Illinois podcast. I'm Shannon Adcock, founder and president of Awake Illinois. We are a grassroots nonprofit fighting woke in the very woke state of Illinois. And I'm very excited for this conversation we're going to be having today. So whether you're joining us on Facebook or YouTube or X, thank you so much for being here. Please share this live stream today. This is, again, going to be a very important conversation for anyone across the country who has watched what is happening with the assault on free speech, with the far left attacks on your free speech. And so we're going to be diving into a very important free speech case that is happening here in Illinois that I believe has ramifications for every state in the country. And that case is Brown versus Neville. And so we have a respected retired Cook County judge who's going to be joining us along with his attorney. And this judge has a perfect 18-year record. We've covered this on our previous live streams, including the infamous Groundhog Day episode, where we showed all these people in Illinois who are being attacked simply for their free speech. And this judge has a perfect record. And he's going to talk about his story here along with his attorney. And this has nothing to do with a judge doing something wrong on the job. This purely comes down to free speech. He exercised his First Amendment right as a private citizen. So we're going to get the full story here. And I'm so excited to welcome on these guests. So I'm going to welcome them to the platform. We have Judge James Brown and his attorney, Brendan Philbin. Welcome, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning, Shannon. Great to be here.
Of course. So we're big fans of the work being done at Liberty Justice Center. You all are also a pro bono law firm doing great work for Americans across this country. And so we have here Judge James Brown, retired Cook County judge. We're going to dive into what happened to you. And we've prefaced it in some other live streams, but for anybody who's joining us for the first time, perhaps, or hearing about your case for the first time, I just want to give them an opportunity to hear about your story, Judge Brown. And then, of course, your attorney can speak to the nuances of this case. So thank you both for being here today. And before we get into your lawsuit, Judge Brown, can we just set the stage on the op-ed, the opinion editorial piece that you had published as a retired judge at the John Cass News website, and it was titled, "His Judgment Cometh and That Right Soon." So this is your First Amendment right to free speech. Just speak to us a bit about that, and feel free to tell us about who you are as an Illinoisan and as a judge, and we'll delve into your case then.
Thank you for having me, Shannon. It's an honor to be here on your program. You do a lot of great things for the people in the state of Illinois, and I do appreciate that. So what happened was in late August, I received a call from John Cass. John, I've known John for a long time. John's a legendary columnist, Chicago Tribune, page 2. He asked me to write a guest column in August of 25. At that point, I had been retired about 5 years from the bench. I retired in December of 20. So I said, sure. I mean, I jumped at the chance. John's a legend. He said, John, what would you like me to write about? He said, why don't you write about a little bit about lawfare and the Soros prosecutors and what they did to President Trump and some of his the people around President Trump? I said, sure. So I write an article for him. It gets published on September 5th of 2025. The day it was published in John Cass's news service, Real Clear Politics picked it up and published it nationally. Real Clear Politics, I'm sure you know, is a nationally syndicated website that publishes columns both on the conservative and the liberal points of view. So it gets published in John Cass News, Real Clear Politics, September 5th. Now, I had been retired for 5 years, never had an inkling that I would ever go back on the bench. And if I could just revert back for a few moments, I retired in September of 20 in the throes of COVID. March 13th of 2020, Cook County shut the courts down because of COVID. That was my last day in the courtroom after having been there for just about 18 years. And then a medical issue arose. I was up for retention in November of that year, 20. A personal medical issue of mine arose. So I decided not to run for retention. I retired at the end of the year. I finished out the term. Never thought I'd go on the bench again. So fast forward August of 25, John asked me to write a column. I write the column. 3 weeks later, September 21st, the Illinois Judges Association sends out a mass email looking for retired judges, asking them if they would want to come back for 1 year to help reduce a backlog. I said, oh my gosh, I would love to do this. What an opportunity, because I feel like my career was cut short. It was cut short because of COVID. Sure. Courts were closed, and I had the medical issue, and I chose not to run. I'm healthy. I feel like I'm in my prime. So
there's a shortage of judges in Cook County, is my understanding, correct?
That is correct. There was a shortage of judges and a huge backlog. 1 year period. I was retired out in Scottsdale. I think I can give it up for a year, go back, do 1 year, and go out the right way. Feel like I didn't even get to say goodbye to any of my court reporters, my clerks, lawyers that appeared in front of me, prosecutors, defense lawyers, public defenders. So what a way for the proper send off, the proper way to do this. And at the same time, I can help Cook County. I'm a lifelong Chicagoan, born in Bridgeport on the South Side. I love Chicago. I'll always love Chicago. So I submit a resume on October 3rd of 25. I hear nothing between October 3rd and December 11th of 25. Not one word. I expect to be called by the Supreme Court to get interviewed. Nothing. I hear not one word. On December 11th of 2025, I get an email, which was just only a court order from the Illinois Supreme Court saying, you are recalled. You start in 3 days, December 15th. So I'm in Scottsdale. I have to close up my house, book a flight, get back to Chicago to start the assignment on December 15th. I had 3 days notice. And I go back on December 15th. I felt so good to go back. It was the greatest job I've ever had. And everything was going swimmingly. And a few weeks later, I see that the Cook County Bar Association and the Chicago Council of Lawyers are complaining about my recall because of the op-ed I had written back in September. I was shocked. I mean, I was a private citizen when I wrote the op-ed. The op-ed primarily was more of a recounting of what had happened over the last 4 to 5 years to America and the use of lawfare and whatnot. And I went and talked to the chief judge. I went and talked to my supervisor. I said, I'm willing to go in front of these bar groups to alleviate any of their concerns about my impartiality or fairness. I had actually counted up. I had served 18 years on the Cook County bench. I actually did a general count up of how many cases I may have heard in those 18 years. And I estimate that amount of cases was approximately 300,000 cases that I heard as a judge in 18 years. Never once, ever, out of those 300,000 cases, did anyone ever complain about my fairness, about my impartiality, about how I treated any litigants or attorneys. Never once. So I was in shock that they were complaining about my impartiality. And again, it's always been my philosophy as a judge, and I think most judges do the same thing. Politics never come into the equation in a courtroom. That's the one place where politics do not belong, is inside a courtroom, the very place. My politics were left at the door every time I walked into the courtroom. I don't ever consider whether someone's Republican, conservative, male, female, black, white, or another ethnicity, ever. Never comes into the equation. My loyalty is to my oath, the law, and the facts, and nothing else. I'm trying to do the right thing. And I always imagined that it was me standing on the other side of the bench. How would I want to be treated as a litigant or as an attorney? That's how I judged my cases. So when this all arose, I was in shock. I couldn't believe it.
I can only imagine. And I'm so sorry because, as you said, you had a clean record. You know, this is a total cancel culture attack, in my opinion. And I'm very sorry that this has happened to you. And I'm very glad that Liberty Justice Center is on deck to support your protected speech. That's what this comes down to. Your speech is protected under the U.S. Constitution and the Bill of Rights. So we'll come back to some more about you, Judge. Thank you for outlining that. And I'd like to turn to you, Brendan. You're going to be representing him in this case now, Brown versus Neville. So the Illinois Supreme Court actually admitted in a public statement that the revocation was solely because of Judge Brown's speech. I have to imagine that this is almost unheard of and a pretty rare admission. So what does that tell us about the strength of this case? And feel free to just kind of open up with anything you think we should know about with the standing for this case right now.
Sure. So one, it's a privilege to have the opportunity to tell Judge Brown's story, both on your platform. Thank you for having us, and at the Northern District of Illinois, where we're litigating this case. And as Judge Brown alluded to, his long, great judicial service was ended pretty poorly by the Illinois Supreme Court by a one-sentence order. They didn't even bother giving him a phone call or a heads up. Just a one-sentence order. Don't bother coming into work on Monday. So with that, they committed actually we plead three constitutional violations. One, they retaliated against Judge Brown by removing him from the bench, firing him because they didn't like his speech. And then second, the Illinois Constitution is clear. If you are removing a judge for misconduct or violations of the judicial conduct, there are only two ways to do that. It's either impeachment by the legislature, or it's through a complaint through the Judicial Inquiry Board and a hearing in front of the Illinois Courts Commission. Nowhere in the Illinois Constitution does it say that the Supreme Court can just unilaterally remove someone, a judge, from the bench. So that is our due process claim. And then to your point that this is really a threat to free speech, think about if all the retired judges out in the state of Illinois right now, and as Judge Brown said, a lot of them are probably like Judge Brown, wanting to come back and finish their service and continue to serve the state of Illinois as a judge in a temporary capacity. And now they have to think, well, can I exercise my free speech rights under the First Amendment? And if I do, and the Illinois Supreme Court justices don't like it, I'm not eligible. But maybe the opportunity will come up and I do want to serve, so maybe I should stay silent. So applying the Illinois Code of Judicial Conduct to retired judges chills a significant population of individuals that should be participating in public debate. Judges have a lot. They've seen a lot. Judge Brown heard 300,000 cases. He's seen a lot of life in Chicago come into his courtroom. So his opinions are valuable in the marketplace of ideas. And we don't think that the Illinois Supreme Court, by doing this, should muzzle retired judges.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for outlining that. And I don't know if we mentioned it yet, but this was for you being brought back to the bench in traffic court, Judge, correct?
That's correct.
Traffic court being probably one of the most politically neutral courts in the country. Not that it should matter. I mean, your protected speech is protected, but I just think it's sort of silly that this was for traffic court. And so you're dealing with parking tickets and that type of thing.
Tickets, red light, green light, stop signs. Sir, do you have a driver's license? Sir, do you have insurance? Sir, do you have your registration? Those type of cases.
Yes. Yeah. So I just thought I found it sort of humorous that this is like the hill they're running on for a judge being brought back out of retirement for traffic court. But it goes to show, again, how I believe a lot of these lawyer groups that initially complained to you, I call them the woke clown cars. They just have different forms. But They just go on the attack. And I've talked to other attorneys who have watched us cover your story, Judge, and they say that all of these lawyer councils have been totally captured by far left woke zealots. So this is kind of par for the course. I don't expect you guys to comment on that. I'm just telling you what I've heard from other people in Chicago who just sort of like wave their hand at these groups because they are political. They're criticizing you for your opinion, yet these groups are heavily involved in far left political groups, and they've all just been captured by these zealots. So Brendan, why sue these justices directly, and what remedies are you seeking in this case?
Sure. And just to follow up on your point, remember that Chief Justice Neville was the president of the Cook County Bar Association back in the 90s. So it's not a long link there.
Okay.
So we're seeking three remedies that are pretty clear and pretty narrow. One, Judge Brown was removed from the bench unconstitutionally in violation of his rights. So we want him put back on the bench to finish out that term. He should be able to say goodbye to his clerks and his court reporters and continue to do the work that Cook County taxpayers need, because just in his short time on the bench, he heard 1,000 cases. So right now, as we sit here, those are thousands of cases that are not being heard, and the extra waiting time for those litigants because the Supreme Court decided to take some action that's outside of their authority. So we want him back on the bench. And then Judge Brown has suffered financial damage too. He packed up his home in Arizona and returned back to the bench in Chicago. And then there's also the pension calculations that when he came onto the bench, that accrual stopped. So there's some financial loss there also. And then we also want the federal court to declare that the defendants, Illinois Supreme Court justices, violated his constitutional rights. And unfortunately, we can't ask the court to repair the threat to Judge Brown's reputation. But the closest we can get is to ask the court to declare that it was a unconstitutional action by the defendant Supreme Court justices.
Okay. Thank you for that. And I think that this win for your case, Judge, would be a win that is set for every judge in America. I really think that's what this comes down to. This is a precedent that will be set for other people like you who could be brought back when there are backlogs of cases, when there is a shortage of qualified and clean record judges to take the bench again. This would be a win, I think, for every state in the country. So I'm rooting for you, and I just think it's pretty clear, it's pretty cut and dry, the merits to this case. Real quickly, I see that Alvin Louie here, Courage is a Habit. He actually was one of the commentators on our Groundhog Day episode where we initially talked about what happened to you, Judge. And I do say the woke clown car applies, because it's happened to all of us who have used our First Amendment right to free speech to battle the far left narrative or to comment on it. They really do hunt you down. And I think it's interesting. We shared this in that Groundhog Day episode. Let me show this here real quickly, where the people who were complaining about Judge Brown, these council of lawyers, David Melton's one of the names. I come back to these people are all very well coordinated. And when they see somebody that could be a threat to their political power, that is when they will send the woke clown cars. And it doesn't matter if you're a mom like me in the suburbs of Chicago. They stormed my city council because they didn't want me on a volunteer unpaid position with the city council committee. And they wouldn't bring me to a vote because it was too hot. They didn't want to put their name on we're going to have Shannon Adcock volunteer. She's not a far left woke progressive. It's no different when you are a tenured judge in Cook County with a clean record. This is an equal opportunity cancel cultist effort, and I'm disgusted by it. And so I'm glad that we have now more platforms than we did over the last several years to fight this. And I believe that the court of law is a pretty strong way to fight this and protect free speech and to just stop this insanity. So I think it's sort of funny. People sort of claim that we're being hyperbolic when we say that this is a legit battle for free speech. It's not. This is actually happening in every state of the country, and it has to be fought. So I'm very grateful that you guys are doing just that with this case. So, Judge, you spent your career on the bench upholding the rule of law. How does it feel now to be on the other side of this, to protect judicial independence? And do you worry that this could chill judges from speaking out as private citizens right now?
Absolutely, I do. We may not agree with each other's opinions, but geez, we have the right to give them, and that should be protected. Of course, there's some restrictions that the United States Supreme Court has put into place, but we all have to at least give somebody or give others the right to say what they wish. So hopefully this case does set some precedent, because I am a strong believer in the First Amendment.
Very good. So big picture here, if the Illinois Supreme Court can punish a judge for criticizing, quote, lawfare, any number of things, Soros-funded prosecutors, etc., what message is that sending, Brendan, to other judges in this state or in the country? And is that why you brought this case forward, because of the precedent?
It is. We brought the case because we at Liberty Justice Center fight government overreach, and wherever that may be. And so this is the instance of the Illinois Supreme Court exceeding their authority to remove Judge Brown, basically because of his speech. So I think it's important, and it would send a message to other government entities, not just the judicial branch, but any branch, that to work within the processes that you have to govern, right? It's interesting. A lot of our cases were, and a lot of the rhetoric around society these days is we need to change laws, and laws that are bad because they do woke things, as he would say. But in this instance, we're not asking anyone to change the law. We're just asking the Supreme Court to follow it. The Illinois Courts Commission system has been in the Illinois Constitution for dating back to the 60s. So follow that. And those individuals you put on the screen earlier from the Chicago Council of Lawyers, they know the process to remove a judge. And instead they just went to their friends at the Illinois Supreme Court and asked them, and the Illinois Supreme Court did their bidding. So it's really unfortunate. So I think it sends a message that we have these systems in place for a reason, and government entities and government officials should follow them, because we, the people, put them in place.
Yeah, I've done a lot of public speaking over the last several years, and people chuckle when I say, can you believe we're literally having to stipulate this? Like the things that should be just the basics of the U.S. Constitution and common sense, right? Ethics, morality. We're literally having to break it down to its smallest iota and spoon feed it to people, even in the court of law. Like, this is to where we have arrived. But thankfully, Liberty Justice Center is on deck to help people. Thankfully, courageous people who are maintaining what we would call an uncancelable attitude, like Judge Brown, are not stopping in the wake of this. They're really going after the wrong people. You know, they're underestimating people's intelligence. They're underestimating people's bold belief in the First Amendment and all of the rights afforded in this great country. And I think they're going a step too far now. Like, now the jig is up. People see the forest through the trees. You can't unsee it now. And it's going to be brought to court. And I think you're going to get a win. That is my hope, Judge. It should be pretty clear and simple. And what we're starting to see now is that when judges do not follow the law, right, when they overrule the law as it is written, now they're starting to get shamed. You see social media campaigns are bringing awareness to judges that are just far left captured, and they're overruling the law as it is written. So this will be very interesting, and we'll be sharing all of the updates on this particular case. Judge, come back to us about your story a bit here and share with us, you know, if this were to be a win, or maybe even not, would you consider still taking the bench in other areas?
Absolutely, I would. I love being a judge. I love rendering justice to people. I mean, it's the greatest calling. For me, it was the greatest calling I could ever have dreamed of. And the other thing, Shannon, I wanted to say was I've received so many calls from friends, lawyers, non-lawyers, judges, and they say, how could they do this to you, Judge? Mm-hmm. Nobody's ever said, we know you personally. Nobody's ever accused you in your personal life of being unfair or untoward toward anybody. And I said, well, hopefully what comes out of this case is we all believe, and we all say it, people on the left, people on the right, people in the middle, that nobody is above the law. And I hope that the highest court in the state of Illinois is found to not be above the law. And have been required to follow the law, as Brendan has alluded to several times today. They're not above the law, and they are required to follow the law as every other person in society is.
Yes. And I think that we are trying to really rise above that. You know, we don't want to see retaliation on people who share a different political opinion from us, right? Somebody who might not like your op-ed, Judge Brown, should not be dealing with this same manner of attack on their free speech. So I think that across the country, people are really trying to rise above that and say, we don't want to see their free speech limited. This is not about, who's going to win out here. It's about free speech winning. And so I think that this is a very simple case. Again, I'm with you. I hope that this highest court will do right by you, by free speech for everybody. And I think that regular citizens need to support your case. So, Brendan, how can people support Liberty Justice Center and support this case going forward?
Sure. Well, we're about to file our response. You can imagine the Illinois Attorney General's office wants this case to go away. So our response to them is due tomorrow, and the message in that response is simple. Where else is Judge Brown to go but the federal court? The highest justices in the state of Illinois violated his constitutional rights. Where else should he go but to federal court to find justice for those violations? So your listeners and everyone can see that response on libertyjustice.org, and you can follow the case. We got a great comms team that updates with developments in all our cases. And Liberty Justice Center right now, we have cases in the First Amendment context from regular citizens who are shouted down and not allowed to speak at city council meetings, up to state court justices like Judge Brown and medical board doctors in Wyoming. So we're bringing the fight for free speech across the country to every demographic and to every type of plaintiff who is being shut down by the government. So I'd ask your viewers and listeners to go to our website, check it out, and check out all the great work we're doing on behalf of great clients like Judge Brown.
Perfect. So again, the website is libertyjusticecenter.org. You can see more about this case. You can see more about all the victories they've had on their litigation on behalf of Americans. And you can also make a donation to them. I'm so grateful that we've had this opportunity, and people will, I know, be getting updates from us. Judge Brown, Brendan, what do you think in closing every Illinoisan watching today should remember about this fight in this time? I'll start with you, Judge Brown.
Well, the First Amendment is real. People have the right to free speech. Obviously, there has to be some type of restrictions, but I was a private citizen when I wrote that op-ed. I had no idea that I would ever be going back on the bench at the time I wrote it. I stand by what I said in the article. It was more of a history recounting of what had happened over the last 5 years, and it was a lamenting of using lawfare against anybody. You should never use the law to attack your political opponent. And unfortunately for me, I'm complaining about it, and lawfare was used against me. And I think that is wrong. It violates the First Amendment and should never happen to anyone. And lastly, Shannon, I would be remiss if I didn't tell all your listeners, and thank you for your platform and for you, but if I would be remiss in telling your listeners, I can't thank Sarah Albrecht and Brendan for what they've done for me. amazing. And I'm forever grateful to Liberty Justice Center for what they've done for me in protecting my rights.
Wonderful. Yeah, it is ironic. It's almost poetic in how you had this op-ed commenting on lawfare and these horrible attacks only to now face them yourself. But to your point, you're not stopping. You're going to keep fighting this. And thanks to Liberty Justice Center, I'm hopeful you will get a win. Brendan, last remarks from you.
Sure. I think your listeners and the residents of Illinois should take away from this case concern. If they can't trust the judges on the highest court in their state to comply with the law and instead watch those judges step outside the law to personally retaliate against Judge Brown, that's cause for concern. So we're hoping to mitigate those fears and concerns of Illinois through our lawsuit.
Wonderful. Well, I will be keeping in touch with both of you for any follow-up, and I do look forward to the prospect of celebrating a win here. Thanks to you both, Judge James Brown, retired Cook County Circuit Judge, now fighting for your free speech, and thank you to Brendan Philbin, Senior Counsel with Liberty Justice Center. This really is bigger than one judge. It's bigger than just the state of Illinois. It's really about whether the First Amendment still protects those who, in your case, Judge, wear the robe when they step off the bench and then perhaps back onto it. So the call of action is to share this live stream, follow Liberty Justice Center and Awake Illinois, read the case summary at libertyjusticecenter.org, and we will keep you posted on any development. But until next time, Illinois, keep fighting woke. Anywhere USA, keep fighting it. Onward for Illinois. God bless America. Thank you, gentlemen, and see you soon. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.
I really hope you enjoyed it. We had a ball making it. Thank you very much.